Hello students, welcome back. Today we shall study the prose part from the treasure trove. The third chapter, that is A Horse and Two Goats by R.K. Narayan. So before I start with this chapter, I would like to introduce to you the characters of this short story. That is Muni, who is the main protagonist. I have already told you protagonist is a person around whom the whole of the story revolves, or the main character of the story. Then we also have Muni's wife. Then they have two goats. Then we meet another protagonist, another strong character in this short story, that is the American. We also see a shopman. Then there are some other characters in the story, although they are not alive, that is a horse's statue. And the main theme of the story is about poverty, hunger and prejudice, social and economic degeneration of a person. Then there is a lots of humor when we see the conversation between Muni and the American, and the language which acts as a barrier between Muni and the American. So since this short story for namesake is a story which is too very lengthy and it's not possible to complete it in one single video, so I have divided it into three parts. So today we shall study the first part, that is, we start now. Of the 700,000 villages dotting the map of India, Kritam was probably the tiniest, indicated on the district survey map by a microscopic dot. So here it means if you see on the with the help of a microscope on the map of India, you see towards the southern part of India a very tiny dot which appears to be the village known as Kritam. But the meaning of Kritam is glory or crown or pride. So its name is Kritam, but its size did not prevent itself from the grandiose name Kritam, which meant in Tamil coronet or crown. Coronet means crown. Crown is being worn by the kings. So grandiose means great. So this became great because the name of Kritam became great because in Tamil Kritam means crown. That means although R.K. Narayan wants to bring out the importance of even the tiniest village in India. The village consisted of less than 30 houses, only one of them built with brick and cement. So it is a very small village or a very poor village which consists of only 30 houses, and out of those 30 houses only one house is a pakka house and the rest of the houses are all huts or kacha houses. Painted a brilliant yellow and blue all over with gorgeous carvings of gods and gargoyles on its balustrade. That means the house, the pakka house or the cemented house was painted with the bright colors, with brilliant colors, yellow and blue color, and there were carvings of gods and decorative stone carvings were there on its balustrade. That means the railings. It was known as the big house, and since it was the only pakka house in whole of the village, people called it a big house. The other houses distributed in 4 streets were generally of bamboo thatch, straw, mud and other unspecified material. As I already told you, other houses were just huts and they were made of bamboo thatch and mud, straw and other unidentified materials long time ago. Muni's was the last house in the 4th street beyond which stretched the field. That means you can just see how his poverty or his economic and social condition was. That means there were only 4 streets in the whole of the village, and Muni's house was in the last street and it was his last house. That means beyond that were only the fields. In his prosperous days, Muni had owned a flock of 40 sheep and goats and sallied forth every morning, driving the flock to the highway a couple of miles away. So, where Muni lived, there was usually no human habitation. It means to say that therefore it was his last house. And once upon a time, now we are talking because Muni is very poor right now, but then there used to be a time when he was rich or prosperous, and at that time he had a flock of 40 sheep and goats, and he would sally them. Sally means to march them out every morning to the highway, which was a few miles away from his village. There he would sit on the pedestal of the clay statue of a horse while his cattle grazed around. So there he would sit on the pedestal. Pedestal is a raised platform. So he would sit there and take care of his goats and sheep, and the goat and sheep would keep on grazing around in the field. He carried a crook at the end of the bamboo pole and snapped foliage from the avenue trees to feed his flock. Avenue in a group of trees. So he would carry a bamboo pole with him, and at the end of it he would tie something pointed. So while coming back he would bring down the leaves as a fodder or as the food for his cattle, that is the sheep and the goats. He also gathered fagots and dry sticks, bundled them and carried them home for fuel at sunset. So while returning back, so morning he would start with his goats, and while returning back at the evening time, he would also bundle up a few small pieces of sticks and the dry sticks and bundle them up and bring them home in order to burn the domestic fire and the food could be cooked. His wife lit the domestic fire at dawn, boiled water in mud pot, threw into it a handful of millet flour, added salt, and gave him his first nourishment of the day. Now, the food that he would eat, there was no variety of food that he could eat. That means he had to continuously eat the same type of food. So there was no newness or nothing new to eat. So in the morning, his breakfast consisted of millet flour. His wife would light in the fire, then she would boil the water, she would add a handful of millet flour into the boiling water, add a little salt to it, and then that semi-liquid form of millet flour which was cooked was his first meal or the breakfast of the day. When he started out, she would put in his hand a packed lunch, once again the same millet cooked into a little ball, which he could swallow with a raw onion at midday. So the same food was cooked for the lunch, and when he would set out with his goats to graze them, she would cook the same type of food but now a little hard and make it into a ball. She would pack it with one raw onion, and that was his lunch for the day. His fortunes had declined gradually unnoticed. So once upon a time he was a prosperous man, but then his good days had declined or had come to an end gradually, unknowingly. From a flock of 40, which he drove into a pen at night, his stock had now come down to 2 goats. Now he had a flock of 40 goats and sheep. So from that, they all died perhaps, maybe, and only 2 goats were left. So that he drove into a pen. Pen is a place where you can keep your cattle or the goats and sheep at night. So a place where goats and sheep can be kept at night. Which were tethered to the trunk of a drumstick tree which grew in front of his hut, and from which occasionally Muni could shake down drumsticks. So he would fasten or he would tie with a rope his goats with the trunk of the drumstick tree, and sometimes occasionally Muni would shake the tree and some drumsticks would fall from that. This morning he got 6. So today morning he shook the drumstick tree and he got 6 drumsticks. He carried them in with a sense of triumph, and he was very happy. He felt very victorious on collecting 6 drumsticks. Although no one could say precisely who owned the tree, it was his because he lived in its shadow. So accurately nobody knew who has planted this tree or whose tree or to whom did the tree belong to. It was now Muni's tree because Muni lived under the shadow of that drumstick tree. His wife said, "If you were content with the drumstick leaves alone, I could boil and salt some for you." So when he brought the drumsticks, His wife said, why did you bring these drumsticks? If you had brought the leaves of the drumstick tree, I would have boiled them for you and added a little salt, and that would serve as a food for you. Oh, I am tired of eating those leaves. I have a craving to chew the drumstick out of sauce, I tell you. Now, since he was having the same type of food every day, so he says, I'm tired of eating that drumstick leaves, and I just wish, or I long to eat the sauce, and I just want to chew the drumsticks out of that sauce. So I just have a craving for that. You have only 4 teeth in your jaw, but your cravings is for big things. Now this wife is very blunt. She is not of a positive temperament. She is very dominating, and she speaks very, she is very straightforward. She says, you have only 4 teeth left in your jaws and you crave for big things. मुंह में 4 दांत बचे और खाने को तुमको नई नई चीजें चाहिए. All right. Get the stuff for the sauce and I will prepare it for you. Okay, if you want me to prepare the sauce from which you can chew the drumsticks, go and bring the ingredients, go and bring the things I require to make the sauce, and I'll make the sauce for you. After all, next year you may not be alive to ask for anything. So she is very stubborn and she is not very respectful towards him. So she says, since you are growing very old, only 4 teeth are left in your jaw. Maybe next year you may be dead and gone. You may not be able to survive to chew the drumsticks from the sauce again. So go and I'll satisfy your unholy cravings. But first, get me all the stuff, including a measure of rice or millet, and I will satisfy your unholy craving. Our store is empty today, so there is no food in the kitchen. So you go and get me the things. Now I can get a measure of rice or millet, either of the things, and then you buy dal, chili, curry leaves, mustard, coriander, gingerly oil, and 1 large potato. So these are all the things required to make the sauce. So go and get me all these things. Gingerly मतलब कि sesame oil, यानी कि तिल का तेल. So go and get me all these things, so I'll prepare the sauce for you. Go out and get all this. So she orders him, so go and bring all these things so that I can prepare the sauce for you. He repeated the list after her in order not to miss any of the item, and walked off to the shop in the 3rd street. And he kept on repeating all the items that she had told in order to make the sauce, because he was really longing to have some new variety of food or the taste. So he did not want to miss any of the items, and then he went to the shop. Now he lived in the 4th street and the shop was in the 3rd street. Muni sat patiently on an upturned packing case below the platform of the shop. The shopman paid no attention to Muni. So here it shows his status in the society. He is so insignificant that people do not consider him important, and they do not show any importance to him. So he went and sat there on the below the shop, and in order to attract the attention of the shopkeeper, he kept on clearing his throat, ऐसे करके ना, coughing and sneezing until the shopman could not stand. Now when the shopman was not able to bear it, so he just looked at him. What's wrong with you? Again and again you are coughing and sneezing and clearing your throat. Are you fine? So he just looked at him until the shopman could not stand it anymore and demanded, what ails you? So then you, kya pareshani? Now what's your problem? Why you are doing like this again and again? You will fly off that seat into the gutter if you sneeze so hard, young man. So the seat on which you are sitting, it will fly off and fall into the gutter if you sneeze so hard, young man. So he's talking in a sarcastic mode. He's making fun of him कि इतनी जोर से खांसोगे छींकोगे तो ये जिसके ऊपर तुम बैठे हुए हो ना, खोखा के ऊपर, वो पूरा सब गटर में चला जाएगा. So young man बोलता है लास्ट में, just to tease him or to make fun of him. Muni laughed inordinately. So Muni kept on laughing deliberately. Maybe he was not feeling to laugh, but just to amuse the shopkeeper or to just make him happy, he kept on laughing inordinately in order to please the shopman at being called young man. So he said, क्या बोलते हो, young man बोल रहे हैं मुझे. So he kept on laughing deliberately. This completely won the shopman over. He liked his sense of humor to be appreciated, and so the shopman was happy, and now he started paying attention towards Muni. By thus humoring the shopman, Muni could always ask for 1 or 2 items of food, promising repayment later. So that means he was in a habit of borrowing things on debt and then he would promise that I shall repay the money later on. So this is the trick. He knew how to amuse the shopman, or how to make him happy. So that was the old way of laughing and making him happy. Some days the shopman was in a good mood and gave in, and sometimes he would lose his temper suddenly and bark at Muni for daring to ask for credit. So sometimes when the shopman was in a good mood, he would give him the items that he required, but sometimes it would annoy him, and then he would just shout at him so badly. So the word bark is given there, so he would bark at him, and then how dare you ask for credit without paying the previous loan. The shopman said, if you could find 5 rupees and a quarter, you will have paid off an ancient debt. How much have you got now? That means Muni is under debt and he is supposed to pay him the previous loan. So he says, see, previously ancient loan, the old loan that you are supposed to pay me is 5 rupees and 25 paise. How much money you have brought it? So give it to me. I will pay you everything on the first of the next month. So Muni said grinningly, or just requesting, he said, on the first of the next month I will clear off all the debts. As always. And whom do you expect to rob by then? So now the shopman is getting angry and he is asking, I know, as if you always pay the money, and this time who are you thinking of robbing? Muni felt caught and mumbled, my daughter has sent word that she will be sending me money. So Muni felt that he is caught, that his lies is being caught. That means he speaks lies in order to bring things from the shopman. So Muni says, he starts mumbling, muttering, he says, my daughter has sent a word, she has sent an information that she will be sending me the money. Have you a daughter? Sneered the shopman. And she is sending you money? For what purpose? May I know? So now he caught him that Muni is speaking a lie. Muni was a childless person. So he says, you have a daughter, and she is sending you money. May I know for what purpose is she sending you the money? Birthday, 50th birthday, said Muni quietly. Birthday? How old are you? Now the shopman is asking, birthday? How old are you? Muni says, 50th birthday. On my 50th birthday, she'll be sending me money and I'll be clearing off all my debts. So then the shopman says, birthday? How old are you? Can you tell me how old you are? Muni repeated weakly, not being sure of it himself. 50. So Muni, then he started, he slowly said, 50. I'm 50 years old now. He always calculated his age from the time of the great famine, which he stood as high as the parapet around the village well. So when he was a small child and he could stand as high as a parapet. Parapet is the boundary wall of the well. So when he stood as high at it, at that time there was a famine in his village, and from that time he would calculate his age. So nowadays famines are very frequent, but in those times there were very few natural disasters. So only one famine had occurred in his lifetime, and he says he would calculate his age according to that famine year, or when he stood as high as the parapet. But who could calculate such things accurately nowadays with so many famines occurring? Because these days we have many famines occurring. So it said that the shopman felt encouraged when other customers stood around to watch and comment. Then now when the shopman was scolding or making fun of Muni, so other customers also started paying attention towards the shopman. More likely you are 70. Now for this he felt more encouraged. The shopman felt more encouraged and he said, you say you are 50 years old, you look like 70. He said to Muni, you also forgot that you mentioned a birthday 5 weeks ago when you wanted castor oil for your holy bath. And 5 weeks ago you forgot, are you such a liar? 5 weeks ago you said it's your 50th birthday and you wanted to borrow castor oil from me in order to take a holy bath. So how many times you celebrate a birthday in a year? So 5 weeks ago only you were 50 years old, now again you are 50 years old. So he caught him speaking lies. So this exposes that Muni would borrow money from the shopkeeper without paying him the money. At this, Muni unobtrusively rose and moved off. Now Muni felt cheated, Muni felt humiliated, so he just got up noticing and that people do not notice him, and quietly he moved away from that. He later told his wife, that scoundrel would not give me anything. So go out and sell the drumsticks for what they are worth. So he came home and he's very angry at the shopman, and he calls him a scoundrel and says, that scoundrel is not going to give me anything, and then you go and sell these drumsticks for whatever amount they are worth of, so that we can have food for night. He flung himself down in the corner to recoup from the fatigue of his visit to the shop. So then he lived in the 4th street, he had gone to the 3rd street. Now going from the 4th street to 3rd street had exhausted him. That shows that he was really old and weak. So he fell down in a corner to take rest because he was exhausted physically since he was old, exhausted mentally because he tried his level best to amuse the shopkeeper, but that was of no use. His wife said, "You are getting no sauce today, nor anything else. I can't find anything to give you to eat. Fast till the evening, it will do you good." So the wife is angry and she says, "You are getting no sauce today, you are getting nothing to eat today. You fast from morning till evening, that will help you in promoting your digestion, and now you are not going anything to get anything to eat. There's nothing in the store. Take the goats and be gone now. Take these goats and go away from here." So she is very dominant and very angry. She is very sternly, she says. She cried and added, "Don't come back before the sun is down. Now don't come back before late evening. Otherwise I'm not going to give you anything to eat." He knew that if he obeyed her, she would somehow conjure up some food for him in the evening. Only he must be careful not to argue or irritate her. So he also knew the trick. He knew his wife was very irritable. We are very angry and stern. She gave him an ultimatum: don't come back before the sun sets. And he knew if he argues right now, she's going to lose her temperament. So it's better to be quiet, and it's not good to irritate her at this moment since she's in a bad mood. So he went away. And her temper was undependable in the morning, but improved by the evening time. So in the morning she would get up and she was really very angry when she saw that there was nothing to cook in the house. But by the evening time she would calm down. She would feel that Muni must be hungry since morning. So she felt a bit sympathetic for him, and then she would cook something, or she would arrange something, borrow something from the neighbors and try to cook something in the evening. She was sure to go out and work, grind corn in the big house, sweep or scrub somewhere, and earn enough to buy foodstuff and keep a dinner ready for him in the evening. So he knew that now she is getting angry, so it's better I leave quietly from here with my goats, but when I return back in the evening, she'll do some work in the big house. She will arrange for some food stuff. So that shows the pathetic condition or the real economic status or the poverty that Muni was undergoing. Unleashing the goats from the drumstick tree, Muni started out, driving them ahead and uttering weird cries. To the drumstick tree, so he unfastened the goats, and then he would just go behind them, and he would utter some weird cries like ऐसे करके ना, क्योंकि goats whatever they get to eat, they will start eating that thing. So just to take them to the place where they were supposed to graze, so he would cry out weird sounds from time to time in order to urge them on, in order to keep them moving. He passed through the village with his head bowed in thought. So when he was passing through the village, his head was bowed down. He did not want to look at somebody because of the low confidence, or because he was being humiliated by the shopkeeper, or he was in a bad mood since he was hungry. So he did not want to look at anyone or to be accosted. He did not want anyone to talk to him, nor did he have the courage to talk to anyone. A couple of cronies lounging in the temple corridor hailed him, but he ignored their call. So some of his friends who were having no work to do, they were sitting in the corridor of the temple. They called him out, "Hey Muni, where are you going? Come here, we'll have some talk," or like that. He did not listen to them, and he just looked down, and he went to the place where he would graze his goats. Only then he looked up. So he was so angry from within. The shopman had said he was 70. Now he was recalling what the shopman told him. And he says the shopman told I was 70. At 70, one only waited to be summoned by God. And this is the age. At the age of 70, one can be called by God. One has to wait that God may summon him, call him. When he was dead, what would his wife do? I was worried. Agar main mar gaya, if I die, what will my wife do? They had lived in each other's company since they were children. So they had been together in company of each other since they were children. That means they were married at a very early age or child marriage. He had been told on their day of wedding that he was 10 years old and she was 8. So on the day when he was married, it was told to him that he was 10 years old at that time and his wife was 8 years old. So hardly 2 years difference. So that means she was around 68 years old. So then he was worried, if I die, what will happen to my wife or how would she survive? Progeny, no. That means they had no children. Perhaps a large progeny would have brought him the blessing of God. So he is a God-fearing man because he thinks that since I am a childless person or we are a childless couple, this is a very bad omen, or that means God is not happy with us, so we have no progeny. It is a curse on our life. If we had a large progeny, if we had a large number of children, they would have brought blessings of God. So through the blessing of God, we could have children. Since I have no children, God has cursed me. Only on the outskirts did he lift his head and look up. As I already told you, till then he kept his head low. So when the village was finished, when he had come out of the village, he raised his head. He urged and bullied the goats until they meandered along to the foot of the horse statue on the edge of the village. So these goats were started finding something in the stone, some piece of grass, and they started meandering, they started chewing on that. And then he bullied them, he just scolded them because he was very angry from within, until he reached the horse statue that was on the edge of the village. He sat on its pedestal for the rest of the day, and that was his daily routine. He would sit on the raised platform where the horse statue was made, so he would sit under the belly of the horse. The advantage of this was that he would watch the highway and see the lorries and buses pass through the hills, and it gave him a sense of belonging to a larger world. Why he liked to sit in that place, there were two advantages. One advantage was that many number of vehicles would pass through that way, and then he felt that I am also connected to a larger world. That means for me, my village is not the destiny, or my village is not the limit. That means I belong to a larger world. And the second thing was that the pedestal of the statue was broad enough for him to move around as the sun traveled up and westward. That means in order to avoid the harsh sun rays, he would sit under the belly of the horse. So there were two advantages. Or he could also crouch under the belly of the horse for shade. So he could find shade over there and he would sit there. The horse was nearly life-size, molded out of clay, baked, burnt, and brightly colored, and reared its head proudly, prancing its forelegs in the air and flourishing its tail in the loop. So the horse was nearly life-size. So real horse जितना बड़ा होता है उसके बराबर, it was very big horse, and it was molded out of clay. It was made out of clay, baked and burned, and was very brightly colored and decorated. And it reared its head proudly. So head एकदम ऊपर, warrior horse के जैसा उसका सिर ऊपर होता था, prancing its forelegs in the air. So आगे के दो पैर, the front legs were prancing in the air as if he was going to jump on someone, and flourishing its tail in a loop, and the tail as if it was flourishing in a loop. That means as if it is going for a war. Beside the horse stood a warrior with a cinch-like mustache. So beside the horse there stood a warrior having a mustache, a big mustache, a prominent mustache, bulging eyes out. Now you must have seen warriors, very angry looking face. So eyes as if they were bulging out, and aquiline nose, or a very curved nose, a prominent nose. The horse itself was said to have been as white as the dhobi washed sheet. So dhobi washed sheet means very clean. So the color of the horse was as white as a sheet that is being washed by dhobi, and had on its back a cover of pure brocade of red and black lace matching the multicolored sash around the waist of the warrior. So the warrior had a sash, and that sash matched with the cover of the horse, multicolored brocade horse having lace. That is very decorative and matching colored, or the cover of the horse with the sash of the warrior. But none in the village remembered the splendor, as no one noticed its existence. But you see, if you have something or if you see something every day, you do not know the importance of that thing. So nobody noticed the importance or the beauty or the this statue of the horse. No one noticed it. Even Muni, who spent all his waking hours at its foot, never bothered to look up. Even Muni, who would go and sit under the belly of the horse, never noticed how huge or splendid the horse was. It was untouched even by the young vandals of the village, who gashed tree trunks with knives and tried to topple off milestones and inscribe lewd designs on the walls. Now, vandals are those people who are finding happiness in destroying things. Like what they will do, they will inscribe something on the statues, something on the walls, you must have seen, or they will write something on the bark of the trees. So even those vandals did not notice this horse. This statue had been closer to the population of the village at one time, when this spot bordered the village. So once upon a time, the village was big enough, but now it was limited only till 4 streets or 30 houses. That means the village population had decreased. That's all for the video in this part. We'll continue the rest of the chapter in the next part.